The 2009 championship was monumental for me because it was my first championship, of course. But when you look at it from the outside, it was the first championship from a grassroots drifter, self-taught, born and raised drifter, however you want to describe that, not another professional coming over into the drifting space. Not to take away from what Reese and Tanner and Sam had achieved, of course, because they just had raw talent. You know, we were basically trying to become professionals, you know, for the first time. And so when I got that championship, it seemed like it almost opened the floodgates, because then it was Vaughn, and then it was Dye, and then it was Daigo. You know, it just kind of like kept going on and on from there, like this kind of like shift in the pattern of, you know, these older, for lack of better words, you know, more experienced racers that were, you know, very professional, very well-equipped cars coming in and competing with us, and us just kind of like throwing stuff at the wall to see what sticks and trying to figure it out along the way.
Man, I absolutely remember Forsberg's first championship. You know, he had gone out on his own, you know, from being a team driver. And I was just so proud of him and his team and his tireless work. And it was just a huge statement for us, you know, as Drift Alliance, and being this core group of drifters, and finally taking that throne away from the, you know, the factory back guys, and, you know, these guys with all these years and years of motorsport. So it was a huge turning point. For me, there was two big things, right? And, you know, 2005 when I won USA versus Japan, and the 2000 World Championship, and then when Forsberg won Formula Drift Championship, it was just another one of those iconic moments. Even when Forsberg, you know, another thing was Forsberg beating Taniguchi in 2004 at the D1 event. Like, that was such speaking volumes for Formula Drift and American drifting and what we were doing. And, you know, that his championship was another one of those feathers in the cap. And I don't look at it as just about for Chris. You know, same thing with my big wins. It's like, it was something for American drifting and Formula Drift. You know, like, it was such big statements of, you know, I know Chris, I know what he went through, what he did, and his sacrifices and challenges and tough decisions, and to see it all pay off, man, it was just such a cool thing collectively, and he deserved it. You know, he deserved it, and he did some unique things and figured out how to keep up with Reese specifically that year, and Sam, and even Tanner, and it was rad.
You know I gotta come back.
Vegas, that was a gnarly weekend. Super hot. I remember getting out there and it was like 1,000 degrees, even in the middle of the night. Turk, that was when he did the famous bunny hop off Ueo's car. Pretty wild, and I was feeling pretty good. I got beat in the final 4 by Miki, but came back and got 3rd in Vegas, which like further pushes up the points. Feeling pretty solid. And then go to Seattle from there, which is another track like pretty comfortable with. Had some pretty good finishes there. We won there in 2007, so yeah, a very similar pattern to 2007 where we won Atlanta, and then we end up winning Seattle, and then start carrying the points lead from Seattle onto the rest of the year. And then we come to Sonoma.
Now, Sonoma, California is the backdrop for Formula Drift's top 6. Chris Forsberg sits on the top of the leaderboard, but Ryan Turk, Tyler McQuarrie, and Samuel Hubinette are all in the running for the championship. Drivers are locked and loaded on this episode of Formula Drift.
So, so we get to Sonoma, and we're in the points lead, and, you know, car's feeling great, it's rock solid, running better than ever. And so, forget where I qualified, but in top 32, we draw Calvin Wan, and he's in the S15, not my old S15, but another one that they got. It was actually one of Taniguchi's old cars. It was an IndyCar race weekend, so the schedule was split. So this was kind of like a blessing and a curse, you know, depending on how you look at it. So we did the qualifying and top 32 on Friday, and then top 16 was going to be on Saturday. And so we get to top 32, we're running Calvin Wan, and, you know, we were having this like heated rivalry with Falcon guys. We have essentially been beating all the Falcon drivers since they fired me. So that was kind of a little extra bonus for me and Kevin out there. Always felt real good about that one. We're going into top 32, run Calvin. To this day, well, I don't want to say it that way, because I've heard stories both ways, right? On like if this was intentional or not, or team orders or not. I've had people tell crew members of mine will say that yes, it was, but regardless, lines up pretty well. We are first in championship and we're running against Calvin Juan, Falcon driver. And so I'm leading first. We're going out for our lead run. Calvin's chasing. Go out, throw down the big initiation, and you know, cars running out and wide and fast. And like as I'm coming through the corner, I get smoked in the front end by an S15, which breaks my front wheel clean off the car. You know, things dangling off the car. It's a mess, right? And we're just like, wow, like, okay, but whatever. That's not my fault, right? Like, got run into. We get dragged back up to the top of the hill, and you know, we just start working on the car, right, feverishly. About 2 or 3 minutes go by. The current, you know, competition director runs over and he's like, you got 2 minutes left, and we're like, 2 minutes, like for what? Like, we're fixing our car, we just got smoked, you know? He's like, 5 minutes, you know, clock's ticking. And so like we start freaking out, people start getting all pissed, and you know, it's like we're just doing what they can to get the car fixed. Long story short, it's too much damage to fix in 5 minutes. Calvin's like sitting over on the line waiting to go, and so it's just like, go, 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 like we gotta run this car. And so Kevin grabs a ratchet strap and runs a ratchet strap around the shock to the front of the car to try and hold the wheel from hitting the firewall as I go down the straightaway.
Calvin Juan hit our right front wheel, broke basically the rear mount of the lower control arm. And it was not a very, it wasn't a rub and his racing. That was a punch. So that wasn't too good. So we came back, you know, obviously tried to call our 5 minute and try to see what we could do. And from what I recall, we weren't allowed to have our 5 minute. For some reason, there was some confusion or something going on. I tried to fix it very ghetto-ly, real quickly with some ratchet straps, and sent him back out there. Followed him, but obviously the wheel was doing one of these. It was going to stay on there. I don't remember if we won or lost or how that, I think we lost, and then we won the protest, and then we had to rerun the next day.
And so we drive it back around to the start line. Competition guy's looking at the car, and you just like see him get on the radio, looks at the car, gets on the radio, like, all right, like, you know, let's do it. So we go and, you know, drop the lights. I go down, I chase him, and get the car down the straight, flick it into the corner, and carry it through the whole first turn around the inner cliff. But then as soon as I transfer it back to the left, that front wheel just like digs into the firewall and the thing just spins out. And so, you know, I flip out, I'm all pissed off, right? And they come over the radio and they're like, oh, it's one more time, you know, because he went straight and crashed into you and you spun out, so it's 0-0. Shoot the car back up the hill, try to fix it again, same thing. They're like, clock's ticking, buddy, gotta go. Same thing, don't get it fixed, go down, proceed to do 2 more hucks at 80 plus miles an hour with one wheel flopping around the whole time. And same thing happens, make it through the right-hander because the thing's leaning left and this side's just not doing anything. And then as we transfer back, it digs in, car spins out. Almost made it through on the one corner, but right at the very end, dug in, spun out. I'm freaking pissed, you know, my spotter's pissed, like, you know, people in the pits are pissed, like everyone's like pretty upset, right? So from there, it's like, you know, it's the end of the day, it's Friday. And so we basically like file our protest and we're complaining to the series. We're like, we felt it was intentional, but that's not enough to get a protest, right? And so what we ended up doing was filing that we, after the one more time, we tried to call for 5 minutes and we were denied it. And at that time, there was no rule on how many 5-minute calls you could have. And so they rushed me to the line or I would have got a 0. We protested that we didn't get our 5-minute call before the one more time battle. That was true. Maybe we could have fixed it, maybe not, because it was like almost there. Maybe 5 more minutes could have done it, who knows. So we get granted the rerun, first rerun in FD, right? Next morning, it's like first pair out, No practice, no nothing, you guys just going, right? So we're like, deal. We line up, you know, we have our car fixed, we just put a new control arm on it, and you know, we didn't change anything else, we just like finished the job. We go out, we do our run. Sure as f***ing shit, did that S15 hit me about 20 miles an hour harder in the same exact part of the track. Hard enough where he hit me twice. I go down, I flick into the corner, sailing through the turn, everything's fine. Corner of my eye, I see it coming, and like look over and just like slams into the car. Was potentially still in the gas because he hit it again. At that point, my spotter throws a chair through the spotting stand. I hear that people in the pits are basically shoving and about to fight each other, because like when we went to run, like everyone kind of had an idea what was going on. So like one of the first times I've ever seen, you had about a dozen, maybe 20 drivers and like team and whatever, like lined up behind the start line, just waiting to see what was gonna happen. And when that car plowed into mine again, everyone lost their shit. And I'm screaming over the radio, my spotter's screaming at judges and people, and like it was a freaking mess. But this time, he hit me more in the door and didn't break the wheel off. So we go back up, we call our 5 minutes, again, realign the car. They're trying to realign his car, it's all towed out because he smoked his front end. And we go out, do the run, and end up winning the battle. But yeah, it was not a pleasant experience in the slightest. The car just got smoked 3 times in the same spot in 2 runs. And whether or not to say on purpose, like just full blown like car smash into mine, like yeah. Which it's like you see drifting, you know, then and now. When there's accidents, like you're bumping and rubbing into each other. When it seems like it's a target, and it is just pretty much a T-bone, it was a hard hit. That's why I've always been uneasy about that whole thing, because it was a little hard.
I'm not sure if Chris will come out and say this, but I think because of a lot of the backstory of Chris used to being a Falcon driver and maybe some weird things happening between him and other team members of that team, I think Chris kind of felt like that was done not accidentally. Will he say it was done intentionally? I don't know. I mean, you can look at the footage and see for yourself. I don't know what Calvin would say about it, but I know that that was a feeling through the paddock. I know Chris's team kind of felt that way. And this is part of the, the weird part of the early days is we sent Chris's car back out in a more damaged position than it should have been. And Kevin Wells was actually his team manager at the time, the competition manager for Chris. And he basically strapped the wheel on to go back out. And the car didn't make it through the second run. Chris ended up losing the battle. But because of the way that we handled it, his team protested the one more time in the competition timeout, and we ended up overturning the call. Well, sure enough, all 3 of the runs that they had, Calvin hits Chris. And so you can see why Chris was starting to think that this was more than just aggressive driving. Chris ended up winning that battle, but had he not, it would have been very difficult for him to win his 2009 championship.
I left that event like I was like really wound up and pissed and starting to think that like there was more to this than just going out and driving, right? I was like, whatever, what's done is done. Next round's coming up. Turk did not have a good weekend there either. Oh, that was the other part I left out, the other big part of the conspiracy. When I was running with Calvin, Tyler, who was the highest points holder and potential for the championship on the Falcon team, his car broke. He was out in 32. Turk, I think he made top 16, or he might have gone out in 32 as well. But like the 2 contenders went out. And so it was like, oh, if won like 2 or 3 battles, I had the championship already. And then all hell broke loose. Anyway, so I was like trying to just put that behind me. I don't get too pissed off, because then as it was going into Irwindale, if I won top 32, I won the championship, even if Turk won the whole event, right? And sure enough, he did, and finished, like 6 points behind me. So like we go out in top 32, we had Doug Vandenbrink, and there was like an issue with the car because these cars didn't have amazing electronic systems in them. And I think it was like, we're like either like losing the TPS or something, like something was like hiccuping in the car and it was like losing power or like losing response or something like that. And so yeah, there was like a mistake made, and it was enough to call one more time because I was already like not really putting the pressure on, with that like that issue we had. We get the one more time call, and then we call it 5 minutes and like sweating bullets. Basically, don't fix anything. Like just kind of cross our fingers that it would not rear its head again. And we go out and just do the run again, and it was clean, and we win. It was a very, very nerve-wracking experience because yes, we had the championship lead, and it was a long shot for Turk to get it, but he was in that nothing to lose mentality, and he qualified first, in the event already, and I'm like, if we don't win this thing, like he's gonna win the whole freaking event and the whole championship. Like, you know, I like had this feeling, and so like I was just like being super timid and just like barely make it through 32. That's all I'm looking for. And we do, and we get it, and it was awesome. And of course, Turk goes and smokes the whole event and wins it. You know, qualifies first, wins it, and finishes like 6 points behind us or something insane. And it was a rad year.
I mean, when we won that night, being the first drifters to actually win a championship, I think it was just a tremendous step at that point, because it proved to everyone that we could beat the Reeses and the Sams and the Tanners. And I think that's what helped make a stepping point there. And I mean, Drift Alliance was a very tight group at that point, and I think that kind of also helped push JR and everyone else kind of to accomplishing that goal for themselves also. And I think that's kind of what got that going, is we knew it was possible now. And everyone, you just kind of fall in line at that point because you knew it could be done.
Yeah, sitting on the sidelines and waiting for someone else to beat a guy really sucks. But yeah, it's happened that way a couple times for a couple people, including myself. Really, like that was like my favorite stat of the whole thing. Not even that it was my first championship, but that it was, the first time that basically a drift kid won the championship. You know, because like Reese and Sam and Tanner were all like professional race car drivers before they came to FD. And so just being some punk kid who liked doing burnouts fast in his RX-7, you know, learning how to drift out in Pennsylvania, moving out, chasing the dream, running through FD, and then being the first to win the championship was, that's why I say like 09 is my favorite championship. Going into 2010 and 11, that was when the big power started coming in. Everyone started to put V8s in their cars. Top 16, got faced up with Samuel Hubernet again. Tried to get as much speed down the hill as I could, because that's the one point that they see, the biggest difference in speed between the two cars.